What's up, Notjust developers? Welcome back to a new live stream. Today, I'm welcoming you from the beautiful Moldova. I'm back in my home country, but I have prepared a very exciting and very fun tutorial that we're gonna get right into. So, today we're gonna continue our Lime application clone, which is a ride-sharing or an e-scooter application with a lot of concepts that you can apply to different applications that are highly dependent on maps, such as, I don't know, a Uber clone or ride-sharing or any other applications that, are very heavy on maps. This application we started a couple of weeks ago. If you haven't checked it out, check on our channel. You can see the part 1 where we integrated the application as we see right now here on the screen. So we integrated Mapbox in React Native with Expo. We are rendering the different scooters on the map as custom markers. We can zoom in, we can do all of the stuff. We learn how to adjust the styling of this map. And then we can also click on one of these scooters and it will automatically fetch the directions from Mapbox and will render it as a line here on the map together with information like distance and the time to that scooter here. All of these are real data that we fetch from the Mapbox, but the data about the scooters themselves, currently these are dummy data coming from a JSON file. The goal for today is going to implement the backend for this application. So we're gonna start with adding an authentication layer so users can create an account, sign in and start using the application. Then we're gonna get into the database layer and the API. For that, we're gonna create tables that will store information like scooters with their location that we will update as they move on the map. We will also implement geo queries to fetch and sort the scooters based on their distance from the user itself. Then we're gonna also have to store the rides that the user will take, because as we can see here, if the scooter is too far away, the button is gray. But as we move closer, and if we are in less than 100 meters distance from the scooter, the button is green. We can start the journey, and then we will have to add and store this information in the database. So yeah, that's the plan for today. And at the end, if we're gonna have a bit more time, there are some stuff that we could implement as additional features, like tracking the ride route or zooming in on the scooter when we click it. But yeah, that's additional. Part 2 is focused on the backend. You're gonna find the link to the documentation down below. At the top, you're gonna see the source code. And if you want to start from the same source code as I have right now, go ahead and clone the part 1 branch that you can find here on our GitHub. You can check the part 1, and this branch is going to be kept as it is today. Okay, so after cloning it, you're gonna have to create the Mapbox account. Then go to your Mapbox account, take your default public token, the one that starts with PK, under the tokens here in our dashboard, copy that one and paste it in the .env file as expo public Mapbox key, and then your key. Make sure you spell it correctly. And then, if you don't have that private key, go ahead and generate it by pressing create a key, give it a name, like, I don't know, private, and add that download read secret scope. This is very important. After you add that, create the token, copy it, and come to app.json, and under the plugins, under rn Mapbox download key, go ahead and paste your secret key here. After that, all you have to do is run npm run iOS, and this should build the iOS native side project, or you can also do npm run Android. It's going to work both on Android and iOS, and then you should see the application as I see it here. Perfect. And by the way, the application is running in development build because React Native Mapbox has native code and we cannot run it in Expo Go. For that, we need the development build. That's why we have it here, Lime application. And you do that using npm run iOS or Android. That's the goal. If you're ready, let me know. Let me know if you can hear me well, if everything is visible, because as you can see, I'm in a new setup. I am back in my home country in Moldova, and I'm gonna spend the summer here. So we're gonna have a lot of tutorials from this location. So I'm curious if everything is okay. Let me know in the live chat. Hello, Vincent, Joe, Corpse Miller, Najib. How are you doing, guys? I have not done any React Native project, but I have done Mern. Can I start with this? I would encourage to start with a different tutorial from our channel. Where is it? Notjust.dev or notjust.dev? Because this one is very dependent on maps, like it's very focused on the maps. But if you go to our channel under the videos, there is this React Native full 8-hour course. It's a very comprehensive, very in-depth, full stack course, both on Expo, Expo Router, and Supabase. By the way, today we are also going to use Supabase for the backend. And if you are ready, I think we can go ahead and start our backend, start our part 2. Let's go to the to-do list, and the first step is to set up our Supabase application. For that, I'm gonna go to supabase.com. If you're not familiar with Supabase, this is a backend as a service tool built on top of Postgres. Postgres is very powerful, and I started loving working with Supabase and Postgres with all the features that they provide. So let's go ahead and see what we can do here. After you sign in on Supabase, go ahead and click New Project, and let's give a project a name. This project is going to be Lime App for us. Let's give it a strong password and make sure to copy it because we're gonna need it a bit later. And let's do create a new project. I'll have to store it somewhere, but I don't know where, so give me just 1 second. It should be here. Okay, so yeah, Lime application, we see setting up the project. We're gonna wait for a couple of seconds until Supabase finishes setting it up. But meanwhile, we can go ahead under the Supabase docs to start installing the dependencies in our application. Let's go ahead and see client libraries for JavaScript. Okay, that's not what I wanted, but under Get Started, under Frameworks Quick Start, there should be Expo. Under Mobile Tutorials, Expo React Native. Let's go ahead under this tutorial. I'm also going to add this in our guide for the install and configure here. So you also have a link to this resource. Here. you have a Supabase build a user management. This is very tutorial for the getting started. We're not going to implement everything in this tutorial, but let's go ahead and see at least the libraries that we need to install. After initializing a React Native application, we have that already. We need to install additional dependencies such as the Supabase JS, the React Native async storage, and it's also recommending us to install the React Native Elements package. Let's go ahead and copy this command from here. Let's go back to our project. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do checkout main. So I'm going to go to the main branch, clear. And let's start by installing these libraries, the Supabase JS, React Native async storage, and the React Native elements. Isaac, can you have a button that when pressed focuses on the user's location? Yeah, I think that shouldn't be too complicated. And when pressed again switches to a mode that follows the phone gyroscope direction. That one is a bit more interesting. Let's see if we have time for implementing this feature after going through everything that we planned for today. But we see the libraries installed. Let's go ahead here. And we need to set up the Supabase client. For that, we're going to create a folder called lib. And inside this folder, let's create a file called supabase.ts. In this file, we're going to configure Supabase. Let's go ahead and copy this code from here, from the documentation. And what we need here is the Supabase URL and the Supabase anonymous key. Let's go into our environment variable and add two more environment variable here. Because they need to be public, we're going to start them with expo public so that we have access to them in our application, in the public, in the client-side code. We're going to call it Supabase URL equal, and then the second one is going to be expo public Supabase anon from anonymous key. We can do even anon key. Now, where do we get these variables from? We're going to get them from our Supabase dashboard. Let's go back to our Supabase project, and under the project settings here, under the API, under the API settings, we're going to see the URL. This is the URL to our Supabase API. That's what we need for the Supabase URL. From anonymous key, this is under the project API keys, under anonymous public here. Let's copy it. And as we can see, this is a public key and it's safe to be included in the public side because we are going to protect our data using row level security, like on the database layer. Okay, so now that we have them here, we need to go back to the Supabase TS file and reference them here under process.env. And let's go back to copy the name here of expo public Supabase URL. And then for the second one, it's going to be process.env. dot expo public Supabase unknown key, like this. TypeScript doesn't like that this can be undefined, so I'm gonna do here or empty string if there is no environment variable, or empty string here. Now Supabase is happy, TypeScript is happy, and we are creating a client, a Supabase client, using this URL and this key, and we are also configuring some of the authentication settings, such as for the storage, we are specifying that we're going to use async storage, so that Supabase will write some tokens to the async storage in order for us to be able to open the application and keep the user signed in, because we are caching some of their tokens, or Supabase is caching some tokens automatically for us on the using async storage. Okay, perfect. So now that we have this client, we're going to be able to interact with our Supabase from React Native. Let's go back to build a user management documentation here for the getting started guide. And what they are recommending us is the setting up a login component. Let's set up a React Native component to manage logins and sign-ups. Users would be able to sign in with their email and password. So this is the off page, and it has some buttons, some inputs for email and password. And I think what we're going to do is, instead of creating them inside the components part, we are going to go in our application where we keep all our screens, because we are using Expo router. All these are, for example, index and details, where these are screens. So let's go ahead and create a new folder for our auth screens. In this folder, let's create a new file, and because we're gonna handle both sign in and sign up through the same screen, to keep it simple for the moment, let's call it auth index.tsx, so that our /auth route will handle both sign in and sign up. On this page, let's go ahead and bring the code from the documentation for setting up a login component. I'm going to copy it from here, and I'm going to go back to our auth index.tsx. I'm going to paste it, and what do we see? First of all, we need to specify a different relative path to our library Supabase client, and we need to add one more pair of /... because we have to go one layer up and then in the library, and from here to get the Supabase client. Now save. It doesn't show any errors, but anyway, we are on the home screen. Look what I'm gonna do just for a second. Let's go to the index.tsx, and here, let's go ahead and comment this rendering out, and instead let's return here a redirect component, which was imported from Expo router, and by specifying the route here using href, we can redirect on the off screen when the home screen is loaded. So if I'm gonna redirect to off, and if I'm going to reload, what do we see? We see that the async storage is null. That's because we need to rebuild the project after installing these dependencies. So let's go ahead and do npm run iOS, and this will rebuild the project so that it also updates and includes the async storage native side dependencies. I was hoping that all our dependencies only add JavaScript side code, but in fact the async storage has native side code. That's why we need to rebuild so that our native application includes this code. Let's wait for a second. Hello from Peru. Hello Rolando. How are you doing, guys? Hello console log from Tanzania. Hello Isaac. Okay. Let me show you some things on our Supabase. By default, we created our application. By default, if we look into the table editor, we're gonna see that we don't have any tables. That's true because we don't have any tables in our public schema. However, Supabase will automatically set up and configure the authentication table. So if under the schema, we're gonna switch from public to the auth schema, here we're gonna see in fact a lot of tables. One of those tables is users table. That means that by default, Supabase, by creating a new project, it's ready to start creating users and managing authentication. So we don't have to change basically anything. Everything is ready here. We just need to use the client-side library and call sign up with email or sign in with email. And after doing that, we're gonna be able to come back here in this table and the information is here. That's what I love about Supabase and Postgres here is that everything is like all our users is in the same database. We can then reference them from our public models or public tables that we're gonna create later. But now if we look at our page, we see in fact that we have the sign-in screen. So what's actually happening is our app is loading, the index.tsx is being rendered, and inside the home screen, inside the index.tsx, we are redirecting to the /auth. That in fact is going to auth. It's taking index because we didn't specify anything after the auth, so by default it's taking the index file, and here it's rendering the auth component. If we scroll down to see what are we rendering, we see that we are rendering first of all an input with a label email, then the input with a label password. All of this information is stored in state in the email and password state, so that as we write, we keep track of them. And down below we have the first button for sign in and the second one for sign up. They are calling two different methods, sign in with email and sign up with email. If we look at the logic of these functions, they are declared above. First of all, the sign up with email, what it's going to do is going to use the Supabase client .auth.signup and is going to pass email and password. Back, Supabase will either give us the session if everything goes correct, or it's going to send us an error if, for example, there is already an account with that email. We're going to check all of this in a second. I'm just going through the code because it's not very complicated, but anyway, if this is the first time you're working with Supabase, it's good to know like what's actually happening here. So that's everything it takes to sign up and create an account. And to sign in, again, we are using the Supabase client .auth sign in with password. We give the email and password, and if there would be an error, we're gonna see it here. So let's see that in action. I'm gonna go ahead and create an account using notjust.dev. Let's give it a simple password. I'm gonna press sign in, and we see that in the sign in with email, we're gonna get an error back and we are alerting the error message. And the error message is invalid login credentials. That's true because we don't have yet an account. If I'm gonna press sign up, we see please check your inbox for email verification, and automatically I would receive an email. But for development purposes, I can go into our project settings under configuration for authentication. I can do what should I do? No, I think I should go under the authentication page, under providers, under the email. We can say we can disable the confirm email so that the user do not have to have a email confirmed. But for production, you can leave it open so that user have to first go to their email, confirm their email, and only after that they will be able to sign in. But yeah, I will disable it for now in development. I'm gonna save so that now I can go ahead and press sign in, and we see email not confirmed, but it should actually work because I disabled that. Let me try to simply reload. Sign in, email not confirmed. But if I create a new account with, I don't know, with a fake email, vadim1, sign up, we don't have any errors, which means that we do not have to confirm anything. Now I can press sign in, and again we don't have any errors. So yeah, after we disable the confirm emails, only the new accounts will be allowed to sign up without email verifications. Now if we go back to the table editor under the authentication, under users, we should see two users. One of them has the email Vadim1, the second one Vadim. We have their passwords encrypted. We have a if and when the email was confirmed, and a lot of other information used for the authentication. We will also see them under the authentication here as two users, and from here you can you can manage them. For example, we can delete the user, we can view more information about him, and so on. Okay, so that's basically how simple it is to add authentication with Supabase. But we are not done yet, because we want some kind of automatic redirection. Like if a user is signed in, we want to redirect him to the home screen. If he's not signed in, we want to redirect him to the authentication. So for that, we would need to access this information about whether he is signed in or not from a global level. Like we need a global provider that will store this information so that we can use it in multiple places without having to fetch and listen to different events. So for that, let's go ahead in providers and create the new file called authprovider.tsx. In the auth provider, we're going to create, first of all, the auth context. We're going to create it using create context imported from React, which is going to be empty object initially. And let's export default function of provider, which is going to render children. Let's give here props with children type for our properties. And this component that we are going to export and use in our to wrap around our application is going to render the authContext.provider, this way exporting the values that we're going to send here, and it will wrap around all the children component that it will receive. So this way, we can go ahead and import the auth provider in our application layout. So let's go ahead and do import auth provider and wrap it around our, maybe it shouldn't be above a gesture handler, but it should be above the scooter provider, because maybe in the scooter provider, we will only allow authenticated users to load the scooters. I don't know, we'll see. But now that we render the auth provider and we wrapped it around our screens, like our stack screen inside the root layout, that means that all our screens in our application will have access to the auth context provider and the values that we export here. What values will we need there? Well, one of the values that we are going to need there is the user session, or whether if he is logged in or not. So session, set session is going to be a use state of type session imported from Supabase. Let's go ahead and back in the documentation, and here, if we scroll down a bit on the Supabase documentation for the Expo, we can scroll past the profile screen because we're not going to need the profile screen. And here, where they mention app.tsx, we're not going to do that in app.tsx, but we're going to need the same get session and also the subscription to the session changes. So let's copy this. Yeah, we can copy the state and the use effect. And, oh, wait a second. Yeah, make sure copy the state and the use effect, and let's bring it in our auth provider. I already have a state, but you can paste it from the documentation. And let's make sure to import use effect from React. We need the Supabase client, so let's import it from lib Supabase. And yeah, that's everything we need. So what's happening here? Well, in this use effect, because it has empty dependency array, the use effect will be executed as soon as the auth provider is rendered. That basically means when we open the application. When we open the application, we are going to use the Supabase client to fetch the session. Then we're going to get the session information and set it in state. We are also going to subscribe to the state changes. So after the user presses sign out or things like that, we are automatically updating the session in state. Now that we have a session in state, we can take this session and we can export it through the values, like this. Perfect. I think what I also like to do here is let's have a state called is ready, set is ready, use state false. That initially is going to be false, and we're going to set it to true only after we fetched the initial session. So is ready true. Because before we actually fetch that session, we don't know if the user is authenticated or not. And in order to prevent some kind of weird redirection to the authentication screen and then back to the home screen, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set while we are not ready, while we are not sure if a user is authenticated or not, I'm going to render a loading indicator, a spinner. So here I'm gonna say if is not ready, I'm going to return an activity indicator from React Native. This is a simple spinner. Now if I'm going to reload the application, we should see a spinner for a split of a second while we fetch the session. After the session is fetched, we're going to render the children, which will render basically the screens together with the session information. And here, the session is either null or it has a session. In this way, we will be able to know like if a user is signed in or not. So what do we do with this session? Well, first of all, we can do a console log session, maybe .user. So as you can see, the session.user has a value here. Well, will there be a third part of this development? I don't know. What do you want to see in the third part? But please don't spam. I'm checking the comments from time to time, but I'm trying to keep the flow going. So I'm gonna check the comments. So look, on the home screen, I'm gonna comment out this redirect so that we can render the map again. Now, if I'm going to reload the application, we should see the map. But this kind of redirection, this should happen automatically. So the plan is the following. Our goal right now is to add kind of gatekeeping two parts of application. There is a part of application that only authenticated users should see, and there is a part of the application that only guest users should see. Guest users should only see the auth folder or the screens inside the auth folder. And let's now create another folder that we will protect and we will only use for the users who are signed in. We can call it, I don't know, home, and I'm gonna use the brackets in order for us to group the screens in this folder, but not to affect the URL. In this home, I'm going to move our index, because the index is where we have a map and so on. Now, if I'm going to reload, in fact, in fact, we should actually have an index in the root, because this is going to be the actual home screen, the slash, like if you go to this slash. And here, let's do export default function root screen. And when we go to the slash, let's simply redirect the user for now. Redirect, and we're gonna redirect him to the slash home like this. Okay. Now that we have these two folders, I'm going to add a layout for them. Let's start with the home screen. And let's add an underscore layout.tsx. This is going to be our layout that will contain some logic of protecting the home screens from being accessed by users who are not authenticated. So export default function home layout, and let's return and render simply a slot which is not adding any kind of additional navigators. Let's import it from Expo router for now. Let's see what's going on here. It has a header home because in the layout stack.screen home layout. So in the root layout, I can do screen options header shown false, and this will hide the header. Yes. Okay, now that we have this slot, we need to access the information to check if the user is authenticated or not. I'm going to close all our files, and that information is in our auth provider under the session. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to export a custom hook export const called use auth, which is going to simply be a shortcut to the use context hook and to the actual auth context, like this. Now, if I'm going to import in our home layout the use auth, const session, we can get access to that use auth using session. And maybe instead of session, we should also export is authenticated, which is going to be true or false, and is going to be true if session.user is defined. And I'm transforming it to a boolean by double negation. So if the user has value, the is authenticated is going to become true, otherwise it's going to be false. Now I can take this is authenticated into the layout, and let's go ahead and console log it first. Is authenticated is authenticated. Let's check the logs. We see is authenticated is true. So if is authenticated is true, we shouldn't do anything. However, if is authenticated is false, we would have to redirect the user away from these screens, away from the home screens. And the route that we need to redirect to is going to be /auth. So by doing this if statement here, we are protecting all the screens inside the home directory from being accessed if the user is not authenticated. Now, our user is authenticated, but I can add a simple button somewhere. Where should we add it? Where should we add it? I don't know, on the index, let's just, on the stack screen, can I add here a button? Just for a second. Title. Sign out. Maybe below the... Okay, sign out, I put it below the map, and if I press on the sign out button, what I want to do is I want to use the Supabase client. So I imported it from our library .auth dot sign out. And that's it. That's how we sign out a user. If I press on this button now, what's happening is the auth provider that is listening to the changes, to the auth state changes, is updating the set session when we sign out. The state, the session state, becomes null or undefined. That means that is authenticated becomes false, and inside our home layout where we are using is authenticated false. It goes into this if statement, and instead of rendering the slot, instead of rendering the screen in the home, it's redirecting us to the off. And this works in a very reliable way. Like it's never going to render the screens that you don't want unauthenticated users to have access. Instead, it's going to redirect to the off screen. And we need the same kind of layout that is handling the gatekeeping. We need that in the off page. So in the off folder, let's create the layout there as well. In this layout, I'm going to be lazy and copy everything from the home layout, but this is going to be named off layout. The logic here is very similar. We're gonna check if we're gonna get the is authenticated value from our context, and we're gonna check if the user is authenticated. I deleted the negation. Then we don't want the user to be on the off screens. We want to redirect him to maybe slash, because the slash is our home screen here, and it will go ahead and redirect to the home. So this way, if I'm going to reload the application, what's happening is we get on the off screen, being redirected from the layout. We can go ahead and sign in with our account. After we are signed in, the same listener will update the session in our auth provider, and the is authenticated value of our context is going to change to true. Now, because we are still on the off screen, the layout here will receive a new value from the context. We're going to see that we got authenticated, and it's simply going to render the redirect and will do the redirection instead of rendering the off screen. So this way we have this kind of protection from both sides. We're gatekeeping the home screen and the off screen. Now if I press sign out, we are automatically redirected here, and we cannot go back even if we wanted. And as soon as I sign in, invalid credential at sign in, we are redirected automatically here. Perfect. So that's our whole of authentication stack. What I wanted to do is in our home screen, maybe I don't need the sign out button here. I just added it for showing how to implement it, because sign out, maybe it should have a different place, maybe a profile screen and so on. And should we clean up a bit here, like removing the bottom sheet from Expo router, removing the redirect, the text. What else we don't need? Supabase, maybe we're gonna need it. Button. Yeah, something like this. And in order to make sure that TypeScript is happy with and we properly type our auth context, let's go to the providers. of provider. And before creating the context, let's define the type of our of context, which is going to have a field is authenticated of type Boolean. Let's give it here, let's give this of context type. Let's call it of context type, even though we can have the same names. Our ESLint configuration is not happy with that. We're gonna give the of context type to the create context, and here we're gonna say is authenticated equal false for the default value. Now in the value it says that session is not expected here, because in our type we need to also say that hey, there might also be a session value which is optional and is going to be of type session or null, I think, right? Because it can also be null or null. Okay, perfect. Now everything works fine. Yeah. And if we look at the layout, we see that is authenticated is a Boolean type. All right, so that's our authentication. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do git add, git commit -m, authentication, or let's do Supabase setup and authentication. Okay. So if we go back to our to-do list here, we have finished with creating a new project. We have installed and configured Supabase libraries. For the authentication, we have created an account, we have signed in, we have an of context, and we have the gatekeeping in the layouts. So part 2, come on, I checked the boxes. Okay, so the next step is going to be databases. Let's see if we have any questions. What you can do is something like this on the root layout. Doing this stuff on the root layout is not working properly, just because in the root layout here, we don't have access to our context providers. We don't have access to the use of here, because the root layout is not inside the of provider. So we have of provider, and only inside the of provider we have access to the actual provider. So that's why it's easier for us to define the providers here and then consume them on separate layout levels. Hello Rogelio, how are you doing? Oh, I finished my coffee. Okay, so we have good progress. We're keeping up. Okay, we don't need use of here as well. Okie dokie. So our next step is going to be to add the database and to start to add the scooters table, because one of the most important tables and data in our application is information about scooters. At the moment, that information comes from our JSON file, and we have information such as the ID, the longitude, and the latitude, like basically the location of the scooter on the map. We can later add a lot more information, but for now that's enough for having like this mapping functionality. And we're gonna have to create that table on our database on Supabase. We have to add data and fetch them in our React Native. But before we do that, I want to open this documentation, Supabase post GIS, and this is an extension for Postgres for geographical queries, for GeoQueries. That's another thing that I really love about using Supabase and it being on top of Postgres, is that we can use any kind of Postgres extensions. This PostGIS is a standalone extension for Postgres that, as you can see, adds features like spatial data storage in both 2D and 3-dimensional data, such as latitude, longitude, height, and so on. Then indexing the database so that we can quickly search and retrieve spatial data based on location. We can query all the scooters and sort them by the distance to the user. And that's going to work very well at scale because the data is going to be indexed, even if you're going to have millions of scooters all around the world. It also adds functions such as measuring the distance, areas, and so on. We're going to need that in order to, for example, calculate the distance between the user and a scooter, not the distance for the route, because the route is always going to be longer, but the distance, the straight line distance from 2 points on a map. So yeah, that's here in the documentation. We can see what we can do with that. First of all, to be able to use this extension, we need to enable it. So to do that, we're going to have to go to database, extensions, and search for PostGIS, and then create a new schema, name it GIS. Let's go ahead on the Supabase. Let's go to the database here, and there is the extensions tab. Let's search for PostGIS, and we see it here. That's what we are interested in, not topology or something else, the geometry and geography, spatial types, and functions. Let's go ahead and enable it. And here, what do we need to do? In confirmation, create a new schema, name it GIS. Let's do create a new schema, and schema name, let's call it simply GIS. Enable extension. Let me make sure that you can see everything. I hope you do. And that's it. Now our database has additional types. Now if we go to the table editor and press create a new table, we're going to create the table for our scooters. Scooters and their location on the map. We're going to leave row level security, that's recommended, but we're going to talk about a bit later. Under the columns, we see that it has the ID, it has the created at, and we can add a new column for the location. And if we open it up here, by default, we wouldn't have the types, other data types. But now, because we enable that extension, we have additional types besides the normal integer, float, text, and so on. Let's think, what type do we need? We need it shouldn't be box. Let's go into the documentation and see some examples. Now that we are ready to get started, let's create a table and see how we can. Okay. We are creating the tables using raw SQL, not using the visual part. We can do that as well, but I think the visual interface is much easier. And for the location, we are using geography point. Geography point. Geography. But how do we specify geometry point? This type represents spatial features with geodet. I see the type is geography, but inside it has points, so I'm not sure if I can do that here. Geography. But we're gonna see. Let's also say that this point is not nullable, or maybe it can be nullable. If there is no location, if we just create the scooter and it's not all yet like on the map, it's not outside, maybe we can have it as nullable. Yeah, that's good. What other information do we need about the scooters? The ID is integer. I'm gonna look into our scooters.json. We have ID integer. We have information about position. If we click on them, what else? Maybe how much it is charged. Charge percentage, how charged. Battery. Let's create it as a float. And let's default it to 1, which is 100%. And let's set is nullable to false. Okay, that's good for now. Let's click save. Failed to create geography does not exist. Geography does not exist. Why geography does not exist? Maybe we're gonna go ahead and use the actual SQL editor to create the table. To create the table based on the example here. So let's copy the create table code. Go to SQL editor and let's paste it here. But before we run it, let's edit it. So create table, if it doesn't exist, under the public, and instead of restaurants, let's call it scooters. We have ID, which is integer, is the primary key. Let's leave it like that. We have a name, we don't need the name, and we have a location, which is going to be geography point, not null. And let's also add, as I said, the battery. Is that how you write battery? Maybe. And that battery is a float default 0. I'm not sure if that's valid, but it's going to tell us if it's not valid. Now let's go ahead and try to run this query. Type geography does not exist. Why type geography does not exist? I'm gonna copy this code because we might come back to it a bit later. I'm gonna go to database. I'm gonna go to extensions and search for the gis. Is it because it's in the schema gis? I'm wondering that if it's only enabled to this let's disable and try to enable it again. Gis here, and let's leave it, select a schema to enable the extension for. Let's do extensions. Let's leave it like default, enable. It's enabled. Now if I'm gonna go to the SQL editor and try to run the same code again, we see success, which means that the SQL query was executed correctly. I can add the code here in the guide so that you can copy paste it later easier. And if I'm gonna look at the table editor and the public, we see the scooters here. And the scooters has the ID, location, and battery. If I will try to insert a new row, what we can do is, I cannot set the location manually. Let's see the documentation. Okay. All right, before we insert some data, we are also going to create an index. An index is going to speed up the queries on specific fields. So by creating this index, we're going to create it using the gist under the location. So let's copy this one, and this will speed up the queries that we are going to send to the scooters based on location, such as give us the closest scooters. Let's go to the SQL editor, and here I'm going to paste this command. Let's change it. Create index. Instead of restaurants, let's do scooters, GUI index, public scooters, using gist and location. Let's do run, success, and I'm gonna also paste it here in the guide. To do create geo index, so that again you can copy it easier. You are going to have it here. Create geo index, just copy it and paste it and execute it. Okay, database. If you're gonna go to indexes now, you should see that the scooters have an index on the primary key and also a GUI index for geographic queries. Now back to the documentation, we can insert data, and we can insert it from the JavaScript side by using this kind of syntax, or directly from SQL. Let's go ahead and add some data from the SQL. I'm gonna again copy it, go to the SQL editor. I'm gonna adjust it and then give you the final version. So insert into public.scooters. Instead of name, we don't have a name. We will only keep the location because the ID is going to be auto-generated. The battery is going to be default with 1. And we're only going to specify the points, the latitude and longitude. Let me get all of this data, and you know what I'm going to do? Give me just 1 second. I'm gonna use ChatGPT to do some processing. Look what I'm going to do. I'll copy the dummy data that I have here. And I'm gonna tell ChatGPT to transform this data to this format. Let's see if it will understand it from such small amount of context. Come on, ChatGPT. Notice the order in which you pass the latitude and longitude. Longitude comes first. Is that longitude is the 2? Okay. And here, yes, it's correct. Yeah, I think it did pretty good. So I'm gonna just copy this part and paste it in our SQL here. And hopefully that will correctly add scooters with the locations that I have there. So let's do run. Success. If I'm gonna go into the scooters table, we see 31 scooters with an encoded location and the battery is 1. Why? I defaulted it to... But anyway, we can fix it. We don't have any features to display it yet, so let's focus on the location. Anyway, that's good. I'm gonna copy this insert SQL and I'm going to also add it to the documentation to help you add the default data. Okay, so now we have data here. Let's look at the PostGIS documentation. Here we see the explanation about the location and how it looks. This is an encoded way of representing the latitude and longitude location. And based on this value, we are going to be able to query the scooters based on location, filter them, sort them based on distance, and so on. Table, but it will return the location. Yeah. If we go ahead and basically query the scooters from the table in our application, the location information is going to be of this format, which is not very useful for us because in the application itself, we actually need the longitude and the latitude so that we can display them on the map. For that, what we are going to do is we're going to have to create some database functions that will transform this encoded location to actual latitude and longitude, maybe even distance from the user. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to create a database function so that we can use the st_y and st_x functions to convert back to latitude and longitude values from this encoded value back to latitude and longitude. And also we can order by distance using this operator. So we need to create a database functions. Database function is another powerful thing about Postgres. We can create SQL functions that run on the database layer. So let's go to the SQL editor. Let's paste the code. I'm going to again show you how I edit it, and then I'm going to add it to the documentation so you can simply copy paste it. But let's go together and create this function. Create a function, create or replace function nearby, let's call it scooters. And when calling this function, we're gonna have to provide the latitude and longitude of the user so we can return the scooters closer to the user and sorted by the distance to this latitude and longitude. It will return table ID of the same type as our public.scooters.id. The name, we don't have a name on our scooter. However, we have battery, and we can say that it's the same type as public.scooters.battery type. We are also going to return some additional columns compared to the scooters table. The columns will be latitude of type float and longitude of type float, because we are going to transform the encoded location back to latitude and longitude, and also the distance in meters. I think that's it. If your table has more data, you can add it in a similar way as I added here. Just provide the name and then specify that the type should be the same as the type in our public.scooters.that column. Then, how do we get the data? Or here is the logic of the function. The logic will be select ID, and instead of name, we're going to select battery. Select ID and battery from public.scooters. Then also call the st.y, which is a function, which is an SQL function coming from the PostGIS extension that will take the location geometry and transform it to latitude. We rename that the output column to latitude, and then the same for the longitude. And then another function is the st_distance. And the st distance, we take the location of a user, and then we create another point based on, we take the location of the scooter, and also we create a new point based on the latitude and longitude of the user that we're gonna pass here, and the st distance will give us the distance in meters. We specify from which column we take it, then we order by location, and this is going to be the operator to specify the distance between the scooter location and between the user location that will come here as latitude and longitude. And that's it. If I didn't do any typos, we can press run and we see success. That means that I can copy this code and I'll add it to the documentation. Create the nearby scooters SQL function. And now what we can do, we can call that function using supabase.rpc, which is remote procedure call. We can specify the name and send the latitude and longitude of a user. Let's try to do that. I'm going to copy this code, or we can simply go to our providers, scooters providers, or it's not here. I think it's going to be application, home, index, the map. Where is the map taking all the scooters? scooter markers. This is a component, scooter markers, and it's taking scooters from data.json. I think what we want to do here is, let me just think, where do we want to fetch the scooters? Maybe in yeah, let's try to do that in the scooter provider. At the moment, this provider is only keeping track of the selected scooter, but let's also add here a state for all or nearby scooters, set nearby scooters. This is going to be an array of use state of scooters. The type, or let's just do array. Now inside the use effect, when this component mounts, we would like to fetch the nearby scooters. To fetch the nearby scooters, we are going to, let's do fetch scooters. This is an async function. Let's call it right away, fetch scooters. And to fetch the scooters, how are we going to do that? We're going to do that by using Supabase client and calling the remote procedure that we created before. If we go to the database functions, we see that we created a function on the database layer called nearby scooters. So let's go ahead and do that. Const something is going to be equal to await Supabase. Supabase imported from our library where we created the client. .rpc for remote procedure call. We need to specify the name of a function. We called it nearby underscore scooters. And the second one is the arguments that we want to send to that function. And the arguments should be latitude of a user. I'm gonna do 0 for a second, and longitude also of a user. And we can see that here, latitude and longitude, which should be double precision numbers. Back, we're gonna get the error and the data. If there will be an error, let's simply use an alert from React Native. .alert failed to fetch scooters. Otherwise, let's do console log data for a second to see what data do we get back. But instead of 0, 0, or even now, we should see some data. If I'm gonna open it here, we see some information, and I'm gonna do json.stringify data null and 2 in order to see it better here. So the data that we get back by calling the remote procedure nearby scooters is an array of scooter informations. It has the ID, the battery, latitude and longitude, and the distance in meters. So as you can see, that's exactly what the function what we created here is doing. It's reading information from our public scooters, but remember our public scooters has encoded location for easier indexing and querying. However, our database function is taking that location and is transforming it back to latitude using the STY and STX to longitude, and also providing the distance. So that's the information that we have here. Perfect. The only thing that we need to do is, instead of 00 here, which says that it's quite far, this is the distance in meters. Instead of that, we need to do the user location. User location. We need the we have this location service. Let's try to do const, I don't know what, equal await location. Let's do, I don't know, location dot get position, get current position async. Location. And let's use location dot coords dot latitude, and here location dot coords dot longitude. We see fail to fetch scooters. Why? Maybe because it's a number. Let me try to console log this object console dot log this object and see what's the data there. Oh no, now it's, I think, properly working, so I don't need to console log anything. And we see proper locations. As we scroll up, we see that all the scooters are sorted based on the distance in meters. That's cool. And the first one is at 89 meters. That's probably this one, the closest one. And if I take the route, we see that the route is 0.1 kilometers. This is the actual distance of the route, but this distance is the linear distance between the user and the scooter. So the linear distance is always going to be smaller, but here we are actually sending a request to the direction API of Mapbox and are rendering the actual distance to travel to that scooter. For example, the second one is 438, probably it should be this one, and the linear is going to be shorter, but the route is 0.6. But anyway, this is super powerful, and it's going to work because we created that index on the location. It's going to work with any size, or it's going to scale pretty well with your database, even if you have scooters, millions of scooters in our cities as well. What you can do is you can adjust the, if I'm gonna go to the database functions, I think we can edit this function. Or maybe even in the SQL editor. Maybe you can add here a threshold of How far should the scooters be fetched from? Maybe let's do max dist meters of type float. We're gonna add a new parameter to our nearby scooters functions called max dist meters, and we're going to do in the select, we're gonna do select these from order, and we need to add a where clause. Where is the where after the order or before? SQL where after or before order. From where and only then order. So from scooters, we are gonna do where to filter out the scooters that are further away than the max distance that we specified here. So let's take these distance meters, where the distance meters is less than max distance meters. Let's try to run this one, and because we have here create or replace, it's supposed to replace our function with the new logic here. So if I run it, it doesn't like it because what? From scooters where dist meters does not exist as dist meters. It doesn't exist. Why? We are calculating it by location. Let me check. Where location and st. Let's check the documentation for a second. We are getting started. Filter. Where? Filter by distance. st within. So I think it's a bit different. Like we need to use this std within. You could form the same query using stdistance, but it would run much slower because there is no way for such a query to leverage spatial index. So it's better to do the within. Another approach is to use intersects and buffer. This will also work and return the same results as our approaches, but it's frequently slower because okay can be very expensive. However, sometimes in a simple. Okay, let's try this approach. st_d within. where st underscore d within, and here we need the point geometry distance. So the first point is similar to is the location of the scooter. The second one is the latitude and longitude of the user that we receive here using this kind of syntax, I guess. And the last one is the precision, how far. So max distance meters. Let's try it this way. Run. Success. And now if, for example, I want only within 1 kilometer and ignore the ones that are further away, when calling this RPC, I need to send the max distance meters of 1000, which is 1 kilometer for my American friends. And now, yes, it works. As you can see, we now only fetched the items that has a distance of less than 1 kilometer away. You can increase that to 2 kilometers, and that will give you a bit more items. So this way you can improve and use like the geocode and the location of a user to only query the items that you need. This way, even if there are scooters all over the world, you're only going to work with a set of scooters that are close to the user. And all of these queries, they are performant and optimized and indexed based for the location query. So let me actually update this function in the fetch scooters. Let me do it here. I added one more block of code under the filter scooters near the user location. And let me also give you this code. Now you have everything. Perfect. Any questions so far, guys? Let me know. So if we look here, okay, so if we look at our plan, we have created the scooters table, we have created the GUI index, we have added data in the scooters table, we have created the get nearby scooters function, we have fetched them in React Native, and also we have filtered only the scooters based on the user location using the maximum distance threshold. I think the next step is going to be to start tracking the rides. But before we do that, I'm fetching these scooters, but I'm not doing anything with them. So let me actually go ahead and do set nearby scooters with not nearby scooters, but with data. Set nearby scooters. Okay, now I can take these nearby scooters and I can export them from our scooter context. I'll do it as the first property here. Nearby scooters. Now in our scooter markers component, the one that is responsible for rendering the markers on the screen, instead of taking them from our JSON, let's do that. Let's take them from the use scooter hook, from the context. Nearby, how did we call it? Nearby scooters. I'm gonna replace it here with nearby scooters, scooter, longitude, latitude, and the information about the scooter. Okay, now if I press on it, it still works. And it also has ID and so on. Okay, perfect. So now our markers are actually working with the data that is fetched from the database. And as you can see, if I'm going to replace in the scooter provider where we fetch this data from max distance 2 kilometers to 500 meters, and if I'm going to save, you're going to see that I only fetched 2 items. The ones that are far away, I didn't fetch at all. And if I will increase it to 1 kilometer, it's going to fetch a bit more scooters, but not all of them, which is good. Only the ones that are close to us. And I think we can keep it at 2 kilometers. They have a bit more. Another thing that you can do, but I will leave this to you, it's also documented here inside the Supabase documentation for the post.js. And it's about finding all data points within bounding box. For example, when you look at the Google Maps, it will fetch and show you here all the data that is in the view that you can see on the screen. And as you will move a map, the bounding box will update and the list will also change. You can do that using another database functions. For example, scooters in view, where you're gonna give four data points, the minimum and maximum latitude to define like a box, and a minimum and maximum longitude. This way we create a square on the map, and then using that square we can filter using this function where we make the box from the 2 points, maximum latitude and longitude, and maximum longitude and latitude. Not sure what this 432 is doing there. Location. Yeah, we're creating a bounding box from the 2 points. I will note it down if we have some time at the end. Fetch scooters based on bounding box. Oh, 4326 is the standard longitude and latitude coordinate system. And then you call the same function, but here we give like 4 values for the minimum, maximum, and so on. And you're gonna be able to fetch only things that are in view. And we can also listen to when we change the view, like when we navigate the map, for example. Come on, why are you selected like this? When we zoom out, we can send a new filter to filter basically a larger area. Okay, let me go ahead and do git add, git commit -m, scooters, the table, and geo filtering. Okie dokie. How is it going so far, guys? Arimo, hello. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm gonna bring my second coffee and we continue with the rides table. What I want to do is when we start a ride, I want to record that ride, save it in the database, maybe even like calculate the time, the distance that the user did during that ride, so that later you can use that to maybe calculate the price and charge the user. Because all of this information should be on the database, should be stored. Later, we might also want to fetch and show the user his previous rides. So there is a lot of things to be done on that layer. So that's going to be the next step. I'm gonna bring a coffee and we can continue. So give Hello, I am back. I got myself another coffee. Larry is saying, thank you, Vadim, you're sharing valuable information with us, especially on how to work with Supabase system. Keep up the great work. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. So, what's our next step? Get status. Okay, perfect. As I said, our next step is going to be about rides. We need to track rides in a separate database with information about the user who took that ride, the scooter that he interacted with or the scooter that he took, and information about the journey. For example, how long, what route did they take, and so on. So let's start by creating a table. We are going to go ahead in the table editor. Let's press create new table. You can see it. And the table name is going to be rides. Information about rides by users with scooters. In the columns, we're going to have the automated ID, automated created at when we create the ride, and let's go ahead and add some additional columns. Let's think. One of the column is going to be user ID, because we will need to know who is the user that took this ride. The type is going to be integer 8 because the type of a user ID. I'm going to open Supabase in a new tab so that I can check the type of user IDs. However, Supabase is smart enough to update the type automatically in the next step. Because if I go to foreign keys is a way to connect entities from different tables. For example, we want to connect a ride with a user. And we're going to do that by creating a foreign key here and connecting this table with a table from not the public schema, but from the auth schema. And specifically auth users. So we are connecting with auth users, and we connect them based on the two columns. On the public rights, we are going to get the user ID, and on the auth users, we're going to connect it to the user ID. We see that the column types are different because on auth users ID is of type UUID, and it's going to automatically update it here. Now, which type of actions? For example, action if reference row is updated. That means if the auth user's ID is changed, what should happen? We can also cascade and update it here in this table as well. However, if the reference row is removed, what we want to do is also probably, or maybe set it to null, because we don't want to lose information about rides. Maybe you're gonna have some analytics to know like how many rides you have in the application. So after the user is removed, we're only going to set this value to null here. Let's press save. As you can see, user ID was automatically changed to UUID because we created this foreign key. And we should do the same thing with the scooter, because a ride will also connect with a scooter using the scooter ID. In this case, the scooter ID I know that it's an int 8, so I can define it here, and I can add the foreign key here with the public scooters, where we're going to connect them based on the ride scooter ID and scooter's ID. I didn't guess it, it's actually int 4. So action, if reference row is updated, we can update this one as well. And if the scooter is deleted, we can set this to null. Save. User ID, scooter ID. Okay, now we can save. And this is going to be the minimum information that we need to know about a ride. But I forgot, maybe we should also, let's go ahead and press edit table, because we will also need to know some kind of a status, like if a ride is in progress or it's finished. So I think there will be only two statuses. Either you are either the ride is in progress or the ride has finished. So maybe we should simply add a column called finished at, and if that column is going to be null, we know that it's not finished yet, it's in progress. And also knowing the finished at and created at, we can calculate the length or how long was a ride. This finished at is going to be the same type as here, timestamp, including time zone. Default is null, and we have here is nullable. Perfect. Let's press save. And now, just by having this additional column, we're going to be able to calculate a lot of things, whether it's in progress or not, and also the length of the ride. So let's start by creating a new ride when we press Start Journey. This Start Journey button is only going to be enabled. The button is inside the components selected scooter sheet, and we have a button here, Start Journey, and it's only going to be enabled if we are nearby the scooter. Is nearby is coming from use scooter, and it's calculated is nearby is calculated by watching the user location, and when the user location gets in the radius of less than 100 meters, then we set that the scooter is nearby and we can start the journey. This way, yeah, now we are very close to this scooter and we have this button enabled. Okay, so what in the selected scooter on this button, we need to also add on press event that will call the function start journey. Start journey, let's scroll up and let's create the function const start journey is going to be an async function, and here we actually need to start the journey. Starting a journey means creating a new ride. So let's go ahead and do await Supabase dot I forgot how to insert something in the table, but Supabase has this feature. If you go to the table editor, for example rides, you can go to API docs, and this will show you examples of reading, inserting, and so on. So I'm gonna go to insert rows, and we can copy this code. we can paste here in the start journey. So it's await Supabase from this is mentioning the table that we want to interact with. We want to insert. What do we want to insert there? We need to insert ID auto-generated, create that auto-generated. We need to insert user ID and scooter ID. Finish that is going to be null. So the fields that we need here is user ID and scooter ID. For the scooter ID, scooter like this, I hope. For the scooter ID, it's going to be quite easy because that's going to be the selected scooter.id. So selected scooter.id. Hopefully it has one. I didn't properly type like my fields, so that's what sometimes it's better to spend a little bit more time to properly type everything and have like auto suggestion, because right now I'm not sure like if selected scooter has an ID, but I hope it has. And for the user ID, where do we get the user ID? We need the user ID of the currently authenticated user. If we look into the providers in the auth provider, here we have this session. And the session, if I'm going to look at the type, the session has user and the user has ID. The only thing is I'm going to simplify this by exporting the user ID directly. I think it's a string, if I'm not mistaken. And it's going to be optional because if it's not authenticated, there will be no user ID. And here I'm going to export the user ID as session.user.id. And the type is string or undefined, so everything is fine. Back in the selected scooter sheet, let's go ahead and consume or get the user ID from or equal use of hook that was imported from providers. Now I can take this user ID and add it to the ride that we are creating. Okay, so let's do it like that. If error, let's go ahead and say set, or not set, but alert, .alert, failed to start the ride. Make sure to import alert from React Native. But if it's not error, let's simply console log data. Maybe I'm also going to console warn ride started. Let's give it a try. I'm going to press on one of the scooters that are close by, and I'm going to press start journey. Failed to start ride. Let's go ahead in the logs and check why is that. In the error, let's also do a console log error. I believe I know why. It's because of permissions, but let's double check that. Yes. Row violates security policy for table rights. That means that the user that is trying to insert something in the table rights is not allowed to do that. That's because our rights, when we created it, we enabled row security level. That's the recommended way to add security to your tables. But by doing that, the default behavior is nobody is allowed to do anything. We need to create policies that would allow someone to perform some actions. Let's create a policy like that. I'm gonna select in the table editor under rights. Let's press on the dots, and or maybe even here, like we see at the top, add RLS, row level security policy. Let's press on that. We are redirected to the policies here, and we see that we are under the rights table. It doesn't have any policy yet. Let's press on the button create policy. Here there are some templates where we can create a policy ourselves. If we look for the templates, there is this enable insert for authenticated users only. This is exactly what we need. This is a very common policy, and if we press on it, it's going to change it here in the fields. So as we can see, it enables insert operations only to authenticated users. Let's press save policy. It was added here with this name applied to authenticated users. And if I go back and press start journey, we still have failed ride. Why? Maybe we need to reload. Let's see. Press here, start journey, and it still fails. Why? Enable. Oh, I know. And the thing is that I'm pretty sure that the item was actually inserted. To check that, we can go back to table editor, rights, and it's actually not inserted, but I think the problem is we allowed inserting, but we didn't allow reading. And the thing is that after inserting, we call this .select, which is reading back the item. So let's go again in the auth policy here and create a new policy for this table to enable read access for all users, or what? If I do that, enable read access to all users. I'm going to take inspiration from this delete for users based on user ID and allow only the owners of the rights to read their own data, because rights should not be something public. Rights should be personal to the user. So we can do that using this row here. Select of UUID equal user ID. And because we have the user ID in the rights table, let's go ahead and to authenticated. Let's go ahead and copy from delete, copy this part, move back to select, and let's go through all the fields together. For the name, let's do enable read access for owners. Only to users that are owning that right. It's on the rights table. It's permissive to allow something, to allow the select. For the roles, let's select here authenticated to allow only to authenticated. And here under the using, let's paste this one. We are selecting the ID of the user that is doing the request, and we are checking it based on the user ID field on the rights table. Let's save that policy, and I think this is supposed, if we didn't do any errors, it will allow only the owners of rights to select their own right. Now if I press start journey, we see right started. Indeed, that was the problem. Besides enabling insert, we also needed to enable select. If you have any errors with this select, the easiest way is to create a policy with enable read access for all users. It's not going to be very good in terms of security, because anyone would be able to read any kind of data, But for development, like you can do that and check if it's working. I'm gonna discard because I only wanted read access for owners. If I go to table editor under the rights, now we should see a ride with a timestamp when it was created, with a user ID that represents my user, and scooter ID 31, which links to the scooter with ID 31. Exactly the one that is closer to us. And because it doesn't have a finished at, that means that the ride is still in progress. Perfect. Is it possible to limit the radius of scooters for maybe 200 or 300 meters from your position? Yes, we implemented that. We implemented that when we are fetching scooters, nearby scooters, we are specifying the maximum distance from the user. So you can specify here, give me only the scooters in the radius of 300 meters, and you're gonna see only this one. You can do 600 meters, you're gonna see a bit more, maybe one more. So that's exactly what we did a bit earlier. And I have here 2 kilometers. And it gives a bit more scooters. Okay, so we are starting the journey. Okay, that's good. Now, we are gonna have to get into a lot of journey management details. Because when we start a journey, at that point, most probably we should not render other scooters and only focus on the journey. Also, another features would be when we open the application and there is a journey in progress, we need to fetch and display it, and yeah, things like that. So what we have to do is, let's go ahead in the providers, create a new provider for ride provider. This provider is going to contain information and logic about the current ride in progress. Let's go ahead and start by creating a context. Ride context, create context like this. Let's export default function ride provider children, and here props with children, and let's render the ride context.provider and children inside that. Let's give here the value, which is empty object at the moment, and finally I'm going to also export a const use ride, which is going to give us the use context, ride context, easier access to our ride context. Now we need to render the ride provider in the app root layout. So the same way as we have scooter provider, let's render the ride provider inside the scooter provider. Let's do it like this. Ride home, ride home. In this component, what I want to do is I will have the ride that we are currently doing. Set ride equal use state. Initial is going to be null. When we Let's export this set ride. And inside our components, when we call this start journey, or should we move the logic of start journey from here to actually ride provider and call it not start journey but start ride? That would be better, because this way we keep the logic about rides and starting creating them here. We need to move the user ID as well, so let's get this use of here. Make sure to import it from off provider. Selected scooter is going to be here. Scooter ID is going to be a number. So let's pass it through properties. Make sure to import alert here. And this way, because we are here, what we can do is, if there was no error, we can get that data and do set ride with that data. Basically, store the currently created ride inside the state. Last step is to go ahead and export start ride function instead of this set ride. Start ride and import it in our selected scooter sheet. We need here const something equal use ride hook from our providers, and we're going to import the function start ride. When we press on the button, we will define here an inline function that will call start ride and will send the selected scooter.id property, so that we know like what ID, what scooter do we start a ride with. What else I want to do here is I want to do console log current ride and then the ride from the state, so that we can see that initially current ride is undefined. If I select one here and press start journey, we see current ride is the one that is currently created with the ID 6. If I look here, that's exactly in the rides, I see ID 6 here. So this way, we also keep and store the current ride here in the store, because in the next step, I want to use this information about the current ride and display it in another bottom sheet. Like, hey, you can now stop the ride, or this is the amount of time that has passed from the moment that you started it, and so on. But another thing that I want to do is, for example, if a user closes the application for some reason and opens it again, I want to go ahead and fetch the rides, because if I check, we see that current ride is undefined. In a way, the user loses his current ride. That's not good, because he will not be able to stop it, he will not be able to pay for it, and so on. So what I want to do is in the ride provider, I will create a use effect, and I will fetch if there is a ride currently in progress. I will say const fetch active ride equal is going to be an async function that we're going to call right away. And here what I want to do is I want to get the data and error by calling Supabase dot from the table called rides In the rights, let's go to API documentation to see filtering. From rights, select everything. So let's do select everything with a star. And we need to apply some filters. The filter is first of all, we need to filter only the items that belongs to us, only the rights that are attached to us. However, because we already added the row level policy, by querying all the rights, Supabase or Postgres is only going to return the items that we have access to. So the filtering based on the user ID is actually not required. But if you don't have a row level security, you have to filter it based on user ID. Using the equal is going to be equal to the user ID from our use of. This is required if you are filtering or if your rights are public and if you get access to all of them. But for us, it's not actually necessary because indeed we're only going to have access to our items. But we want where the user ID is us and where finished at is null. So filtering equal, or is null here, is null. Instead of equal, we're gonna do dot is null, and the column name that we want to filter on is called finished underscore at. Let's double check it. It's finished at. Okay. And let's see, let's console log data. Yes, we have 2 items here. And if I'm going to update one of the items to set that it was finished at this amount or at this time, and if I'm going to reload, we are only going to receive back the item that has finished at with null, meaning that that write is currently in progress. So what I'm going to do is let's do dot single in order to return only one item, not an array, the first item. So if I do console log data, we see that now it's an object, not an array. And what I can do is I will do if data, then set write with data. Because if this one is also going to be finished, that means that there is no data, right? Because there is no current write. Let's check that. Yeah, it's null, so it's not gonna get here. And another thing that I want to do is I want to prevent starting a ride if you already have one in progress. So if there is a ride in state, let's return. We can also show an alert, alert.alert, cannot start a new ride while another one is in progress. Save. So if I go ahead here and do start journey, cannot start. Why? Reload. Current ride undefined. If I go here and do start journey, ride started. If I press again, we see that I cannot start it again. And if I reload the application, it should fetch a current ride, and again, I still cannot start a new one because I still have a previous one. So that's good. That's allowing us to create a ride, to fetch the active ride, and to prevent creating new rides if there is one currently active. The next step is going to be to go ahead and use the information about the current ride and display it in a bottom sheet, similar to how we have here information about a scooter. Hello, Alexander. How are you doing? It would be nice to make the nearest scooter dynamic, so a user can search based on required distance. What do you mean nearest scooter dynamic? Okay, guys, so what do we have to do? On the home screen index, we have here selected scooter sheet. Let's, a similar way how we have selected scooter sheet here, let's create another function like this that will be responsible for displaying the current ride. And that component is going to be called active ride sheet.tsx, and here let's do export default function active ride sheet that will return and render something. I'm going to get inspiration from the selected scooter sheet very much, so let's start by rendering the bottom sheet like this. And here let's import the bottom sheet. Let's see. Where is it? Come on, import from bottom sheet. We need a reference. The reference, we define it here. We need to import use ref. What else? What else? Why it doesn't like it? Empty components are self-closing. Okay, yeah. Because we are going to do we're going to consume the current ride from the use ride provider, and let's get the ride itself. Now, inside the bottom sheet, let's do like this. If there is a ride, then render the, how did we do here? The bottom sheet view. Bottom sheet view, let's close it here. Come on, bottom sheet view. And inside, let's simply add a text that will say ride in progress. The text we can import from React Native. The bottom sheet view we are going to import from bottom sheet. And the last step is to render the active ride sheet inside our home index, similar to how we have a selected scooter. Active like this, active ride sheet. let's import the component. And now active ride. Let's do a console log here, ride. We see it's undefined. Oh, because we are not exporting it. Let's go back to our provider's ride provider and take this value and export it through the value of our context provider like this. So now in our active ride sheet, we have that information here, and similar to this set selected, we expand if a ride is enabled. So we're gonna do here use effect when the ride changes, and if the ride has a value, then expand the bottom sheet. So now we see a ride in progress. Okay. Okay, ride in progress. Give me just 1 second, I'm gonna bring some water and we continue, because the next step is going to be to render information about the ride, a button to be able to finish the ride and maybe even pay, and also additional things like disabling markers if there is a ride in progress, maybe showing some buttons and so on. But for that, before that, yeah, I need some water. I'm gonna be back in a second. Okie dokie. Oh, Alexandra, thank you very much. Thank you for the donation. You bought me a coffee. Okie dokie. Ride in progress. I think before displaying like information about the ride itself, let's have a possibility to finish the ride. So similar to how invest selected Friday. Yes, it's Friday. So similar to how we have invest selected scooter sheet at the bottom here, a button. Let's add the same kind of button in our active ride sheet inside the bottom sheet view at the end. Let's do here finish ride or finish journey. On press, I don't know yet what should be done, should be here. Disable, I don't think the button should be disabled. Like if we started, we should be able to finish it. Okay, we have finished journey, but the button was imported from React Native when in fact I wanted it to be imported from our custom components, from .button. Okay, now we have that button there, finish journey. And when we call it, we should probably simply we should call it finish ride function that is going to be imported from the ride provider. Let's go ahead in the ride provider. Similar to how we have a start ride, let's create a function here, const finish ride async like this. It's going to do something, and we need to make sure to export it as a value of our provider. What should happen here? Finishing a ride basically at this moment means adding the finished at timestamp. So let's do that. Let's do const data error. We need to update the item, so let's do await Supabase dot from rides. We want to update the, how do we update? Let's also check the documentation here. Update rows. We need to update something, but also we need to add an equal or a filtering option to update only some items. So we want to update the finished at with the current timestamp. How do we get it? Should we do a new date? Let's see if that's going to work. Probably no. Values. Oh, it should be object. And we need to do we want to update the ride based on the ID of our current ride, .id. Ride is possible and defined, so we need to make sure if a ride is undefined, then we cannot finish anything, return. And let's do a console.log. I mean, we don't have to do anything there, we're just going to check if it actually works, but if there is no error, or let's do it the other way. If there is an error, let's alert failed to finish the ride. And if there is no error, if everything went okay, we are gonna simply do reset the ride in state, set ride, null or undefined. Now if I press finish journey, Yes, it works. And let's check if it actually updated it here. I don't think it did, because we don't, yes, it didn't do it, because we don't have a policy to allow the user to update his items. So let's go to auth policy back, and let's create a new policy. Again, I'm gonna go to the delete and only copy the row 7, where we are checking the auth UID to be equal to the user ID. And I'm gonna go back to update, and let's do enable update for users based on, let's call ID. This is just the name. It's going to be for update. The target roles we can do authenticated here. And let's replace the 2 rows here in the using and with check to the ID like this. This way, only the owner override that has the same user ID is going to be allowed to do the update request. Let's do save, and let's try that again. If I'm going to reload, finish journey, it removes from there, and the one with 7, it correctly sets the time. The time 15, yeah, plus 0. I think it's correct. Yes, if I open it up, it's the same time as in my time zone. Okay, that's good. That means that now if I'm going to reload, it's not going to open up the current ride because there is no current ride, and I can go ahead and start a new one. And we see ride in progress. And before pressing finish ride, what I want to do is I will go to the I will go here, and I will, in the use effect, when the ride changes, the way I expand, I also want to do bottom sheet.wrap.current close, because when we get a new ride, we want to expand. When we finish a ride, we want to close. So if I do finish ride, why did it fail to finish the ride? Finish. Okay. If I do it like this, I can start, and then I can finish. Because current ride is an array. I see. Current ride, when creating it, not when fetching it, when creating it is an array. So let's go in the ride provider. When we have start, we have select. Should it be single? I will finish the ride. This is supposed to work. If I start a new one, it doesn't actually start. I mean, it starts, but 1 second. I can leave select, but here I'm gonna do data at position 0. Current ride undefined. If I go here, start, current ride, an object, and I can finish the ride, it works. Perfect. And I can remove this console warn. No need for it anymore. I don't need the data here. Maybe not null, but undefined. That's okay as well. Okay, so that's git status. Let's do git add, git commit, start and manage rights. We still have a lot of work to do around these rights, but at least we can go ahead, start them, and see the ride in progress. Then when it's time, finish the journey and be able to start one again. And all of this information is stored in the database, and we can properly see what's going on. Why we have here null, but at the same time they're not? That's a bit strange, because I would expect those items to be in the current ride, but they're not. Because user ID is the same, right? Null. Data finished at null. User ID. Can you do git push, please? Yes, I can. Git push. Console log data. Why I don't see these two items as current rights? They have my ID and they have finished at null. Null. Let's try to start a journey and reload. It's still current ride undefined. Something is wrong with this query. Error. Is there something with error there? Yes, the results contain 3 rows. The result contains 3 rows, but I have single here. Okay. Probably I will have to do select, or maybe do a dot limit 1 to take only the first one. Yeah. So because of a bug that we created 2 when we had 2 writes in progress, the dot single was giving us an error. So we debugged it and we saw that we need to limit the request to only 1 to be able to use the dot single, or to use select and then access at position 0. Because in real life, you should never have a situation where a user has 2 writes in progress. You should prevent it as much as possible, but anyway, that situation might happen. I don't know when and how, but it might. So we see that if we reload the application, we see the write in progress, we can finish it. If I reload again, I'm gonna see another one because I had 2 of them. If I reload, it's still write in progress. Finish. And if I reload, now it should be clear. Yes. Now I can start new writes if I want. Start a new journey, write in progress, finish journey, perfect. You only get a single ride? What do you mean? You only get 1 ride at a time. I mean, 1 active in progress ride. because before starting a new one, you should kind of finish and pay for the previous one. That's why we are fetching, that's why, yeah. Hello. Okay. What else? We need to improve a little bit the interface to switch between looking for a scooter and managing the ride. Because when we start a ride, I don't want to see the other scooters on the map, right? So in that case, I'm thinking, would it be easier to create two separate screens, one for looking for a ride and another one for managing the ride itself? Would that be easier? I believe so. Or we can check the map. What do we do there in the map? Map, scooters, markers. Scooter markers. Alexandra is here. What would be the best scooter? I mean, I can easily consume the ride here and conditionally render the markers based on whether we have a ride or not. Yeah, let's do that. Const ride equal use ride. And let's even create a variable. Show markers equal, I'm gonna say show it only when ride is null. And let's conditionally render the markers only if we want to show them. Okay, now we have a ride, we don't see the markers, finish ride, we go back and see them. If I start it, they disappear. And probably the same with a line route. Let's do it like this. I'm going to add it here. And let's add this one right here so that if we don't show the markers, we never show the line as well. If we finish the journey, we still see that one. Start journey. We see this one. We go, then we finish the journey, and then we see the scooters again. Okay, that's already better. I think I should also, when starting the ride, I should kind of reset like the direction to the scooter and the scooter itself, the selected scooter, so that we don't show it here. So where that is happening, in the selected scooter sheet, where we press start journey, besides actually starting the ride, I should also do the set selected. or how do we have access to that function? Selected scooter is from use scooter. Set selected scooter. We're gonna do to undefined. So if I start the journey, doesn't exist. Oh, because we need to import it. Finish. In the scooter provider, selected, fetch direction, set is nearby false. When the selected scooter changes to a value, it does this. Otherwise, if it changes to undefined, what I want to do is I want to set direction to undefined. And set is nearby, also to false. So if I go ahead and start the journey, and reload, and then finish the journey, it should reset. Yeah. Now it resets, but it doesn't close the bottom sheet. The bottom sheet is coming from this selected scooter sheet that is automatically expanding when we select a scooter, but when we unselect a scooter, we should close it as well. Bottom sheet ref current dot close. So now we go here, we start the journey, ride in progress, we finish the journey, and we are in the initial state. This is a much better way. And if we do that, I think when we close, we should also unselect it. For example, in the bottom sheet, do we have a on close? What I want to do is set selected scooter with undefined, so that it resets the directions as well. If I close, you see it unselects and removes even the line, so it's much smoother like this. We go here, we start the journey, we are in this mode, then we finish the ride, we go back to this one. Okay, this is a much better way. Let's go ahead and do git add, git commit -m, show hide markers based on journey or based on ride status. Git push origin main. Alexander is asking, is there a plan to limit the area of a map where the user can actually go on the scooter, or this is not in the scope? I don't have this one in the scope, but this is a quite advanced but very useful feature of adding, like, in a way, geofencing. With Mapbox, you can create this kind of areas on the map where you want to be notified, and if that happens, you can prevent the scooter from even going, or you can just add a flag like is in danger or is in restricted zone in a table, show that in the application. If your scooter is going to connect to the same database, he can read the same information. So yeah, that would be possible, but I don't have that planned. Okie dokie, okie dokie. Okay, let's, if I do start journey, right in progress. I like to improve this view a little bit, right in progress. Right slow, right slow. Da, 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 da. In the active ride sheet. Similar to how we have, I want to display the time, or no, the time is actually a nice to have feature. I think what's more important is to track the user location, is to track like where is the user traveling to. That is going to be challenging, but that is very important for this kind of applications, because we want to know like from what point, through what route did the user go for a ride, how long was the distance, how much time it took, so that we can probably build based on that information, and also like be able to see like the route, if something happens to debug like where is the scooter currently at. So that is going to be, as I said, a bit challenging, but it's going to be an important part of application. So let's think about this together. What we can do is we can track the user's location and store the user location in an array or in the database for a current ride at different intervals of times, like at every 10 seconds, maybe to store the location, a new point of a location. So in the ride provider, we're going to have to start listening to the location updates. We have that kind of listener in the scooter provider where we are doing watch location. So let's copy this use effect starting from here all the way to here. Let's copy this use effect in the ride provider. Here after our first use effect. So we need to start tracking users' location only when a ride is going to become, when we start a ride. So we will call this use effect every time the ride changes, and if the ride is defined, we're gonna call watch location. We need to import the location, where is it? Everything as location from Expo location in the ride provider. Here. And we are subscribing to location updates, and we are saying like update us at every 10 meters in this case, distance interval. Maybe you can do it at every 50 meters. If you want like less often, you can do it even more often. And every time the user moves 50 meters, this function is going to be called with a new location. So we do some things with it here. We don't need it for a moment. Let's just do console log new location, like this, and latitude like this. Now, after I start a ride and the iOS has this possibility to simulate a city run. If I select my simulator and go to where? IO, input, no, features, location, and I can simulate a city run. But this one is going to move me in USA. That's not very good, but anyway, it's simulating a city run. And we're gonna see this kind of console logs from time to time. New location. New location. And should be new location. Perfect. So if I finish the journey, even if I simulate the run, I should not see new locations because we are only listening for location updates when we have a current ride. So yeah, listening to the user location updates is working fine. Okay, what do we do with this information? Well, the first thing, I want to draw a line on the map from the point where the user started all the way till, yeah, basically to draw the route based on these coordinates. Drawing a line, we saw that inside our map. We have here direction coordinates and we have a line route. Let me do feature location, custom location to move back to Barcelona and reload. So we see this line route that is simply drawing a line based on different coordinates. But what are these coordinates? How do they look? Do we have information about that? Let's go into the line route and do a console log coordinates. So coordinates is an array of basically arrays where we have two, which is longitude, latitude, latitude. Okay, so we can render this line route. Well, first of all, we need to store the locations at different points in time, like the route with all the locations where the user have been during his ride. So let's go ahead and do here const ride route, set ride route is going to be use state, is going to be an array. Every time we get a new location, we are going to update the ride route with current route, which is an array. And what we need to do is we need to keep all the values from the current route, and at the end we need to add another point with the longitude as the first value and latitude as the second one. Now what we can do is we will export the ride route from this context, ride and ride route, and inside our map let's get the ride route, and if there is a ride route, let's render it using the line route component. So if there is a ride route, if we're keeping track of it, then render the line route like this, using the coordinates ride route. Okay, let's give it a try and see what is going to happen. I'm going to again simulate a city run. Features, location, city. Let's do bicycle ride. It's going to be faster. But we don't have a ride started, right? So I need to go using the custom location, go back to Barcelona, select one of these scooters, start a journey, go to a city bike. It's going to add a huge line from Barcelona to USA. But then I hope you see, it's doing something, but I don't know why I don't see the line. If ride route, coordinates ride route. It's correctly like growing that part, but it's not rendering the route. Let's finish the journey. Let's go back to Barcelona. I will copy. I just need to see if it has the same kind of structure. If I do it like this, 241. Yeah, it kind of looks the same. ID route source refer to existing source, but existing attribute was missing. Maybe the line route, I have an ID here. Probably it's because of this. It's caching it. Should I do here ID, which will default to, I don't know, route source? It's type string. And let's send the ID here, ID. And in the map, when rendering the ride route, let's give here an ID ride route. But this is an array, so maybe I should do if length is more than 0, only then render it. Now rendering the small thing here works. Let's start the journey and let's move it to city. Yes, it's working. I see that it's working. It first drew a huge line from Barcelona to this location. And now I hope that it's going to change. Yes, it changes. As we add new locations, as you can see, it changes. Nice, nice, perfect. I love it. And if you decrease in the providers, right provider, where you watch for the locations, if you decrease the distance interval to 10 meters, the line is going to update much faster and is going to be way smoother. You see? Like every 10 meters, we update the position and we have like much more dots basically on our line. But at the same time, we're gonna have to store way more data. So here we need to find a balance of how much data do we want to store. Why doesn't follow the user location? Because in the map I have their camera follow user location. If I reload and if I don't touch it, yeah, it follows, it moves, as you can see. But if you touch it, after that I don't know how to start following again. Nice, cool. So we have this line showing the route. I think the next step is going to be to store it in the database when we finish it, when we finish the ride. Yay! Nice. Give me just 1 second. But before I save it in the database, you know what I'm thinking as well? There is an API on Mapbox docs that would be perfect for this use case. If we go to the navigation directions API, if we look at the API docs, there is the map matching, I think this one. The matching API snaps fuzzy, inaccurate traces from a GPS unit or a phone to the OpenStreetMap and shows an actual path during the direction API. This produces clean paths that can be displayed on a map or used for other analytics. So this is exactly what we are doing. We are snapping fuzzy GPS coordinates, but using this API, we can map it to an actual route, and it will also give us the same information as we got from the directions API, such as the distance, such as the usual time or usual duration. So let's try to see this in action. Profile coordinates. Profile coordinates. Okay, let's go ahead in our application. Where are you going? And in the services directions, let's create another function, async function. How is it called that? Fetch direction based on coordinates. So this is going to return a path on the road that is closest to the input traces. So we're going to need to do the same kind of request. Let's just copy paste it here. Fetch base URL /mapbox. Is that correct? api.com/matching. No, this is... Yeah, let's do some changes here. So the base URL, let's keep only the till here and move the /directions to the get directions API. /directions, come on, Control X, and put it here. Because we're going to need the base URL here, api.mapbox.com /matching v5 profile, so /matching v5 dot profile, which is, in our case, it shouldn't be walking because we are probably is going to be better cycling. Driving, walking, cycling. Because a scooter is closer to cycling than walking. Okay. And then coordinates. A semicolon separated list of longitude, latitude pairs to visit in order. Between 2 and 100 coordinates. So that's not a lot of coordinates actually. We will need to be careful with that. But anyway, coordinates. We're going to receive them here, coordinates, as an array of arrays. And let's parse them because they are arrays of arrays. So string is going to be equal. We're gonna map through them, through the coordinates. The easiest way is going to be to where do we have a console log of coordinates? Here. Is to use ChatGPT. Transform this structure to a, and I'm gonna just check here. a semicolon separated list of latitude and longitude. Maybe I should have given him like in JavaScript. So maybe I can stop. Let's do transform this array to a semicolon. Give me the JavaScript code. Okay, no. Okay, maybe. Let's see. So yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. We first map, and then we join them with semicolon. Yeah, perfect. So where do we have? We first map the first one, the second one, then we join with this one, and the coordinate strings are going to go right here in the URL. Now back to the documentation. Coordinates JSON. Optional parameters, annotations. Yes, we have the same annotations. I'm gonna leave them. Distance, duration, speed, okay. Radius, tabs, banner, language, voice. Ignore. Let's give it a try. Let's just give it a try. Fetch directions based on coordinates. When do we need to do that? I think when we press finish write, like when after we finish a write from fuzzy coordinates, let's transform everything to actual route based on the matching API. So in the write here, when we press finish write, let's do const, I don't know, actual route, or yeah, is equal to await. How is it called? Fetch directions based on coordinates, and the coordinates is going to be the right route. Console log actual route. So maybe I will do the following. I'll do distance interval at 100 meters, so that is going to be very it's going to update rarely. And it's going to, let's see, come on. Yes, as you can see, it's going to be not very accurate, right? But after we press finish write, I hope it's going to work. Let's just try, because I'm pretty sure it's not going to work right away. Let's just do finish write. What's that? Oh, we are console logging a lot of things. I can do J to open the JavaScript debugger to see what request we are actually sending there. Come on. WebSocket, what? npm start. Let's give it one more try. Prod-G, hello. Alexander, have a great weekend. So we don't have a ride started, so I'm going to have to, through locations, move back to Barcelona. Reload. Start a journey with this one, and then run to USA. I'm actually going to reload just because I want to start the journey from here, not from Barcelona. It's going to be a very huge route and probably fail. But if I start here and get like a couple of locations, it starts drawing on the map. I'm gonna wait for a second. I need one more line. If I do finish journey, message not found, message not found, message not found. What's the problem there? Let's see in the fetch directions. Response.json. And the response.json is not found. Doesn't want to open the debugger. Oh no, it wants. So network, let's try again to see what is the URL that we are requesting. From the database, it's going to be easier if I go to the latest ride and simply remove the finished at. The finished at, if I clear, and if I will reload the application, it's going to be in ride in progress. I want to see the request that we are making. Ride slow. I don't think it's showing it, so let's do it again. Come on. Yes, it's starting. So if I do now finish journey, message not found. Why doesn't show it in the network? I need it here. I'm going to change some stuff because it's very hard to debug. For example, in finish ride, I'm going to comment out the actual part that is finishing the ride so that I can call the get actual route multiple times. And I will simply go here, again, replace it with null so that I have a current ride to start tracking the location. Come on. Ride slow, finish journey, message not found. Okay, finish journey. Why the network tab is empty? Message not found. Okay, we can go to the directions and maybe console log this URL. Console log the URL, and this way come on, In the right provider, I'm gonna reduce a little bit the distance, how often we are watching location, from 100 to 30 meters, just for a second. Are you running? Come on. So this is the URL request. Let's copy it and open it in browser like this. Message not found. Message not found. Matching, cycling. Matching, driving. Let's try to copy this one, and if this one works. Yeah, this one works. Let's put them side by side and see what's different from this one with our new file. And this one. We're gonna put it side by side and see. So first one, let's check if the until mapbox, if they match. No, they don't match. HTTPS API mapbox.com matching. /v5. Okay, then /mapbox/driving. I don't have mapbox here. That's my problem. But it doesn't have it here as well. Oh, no, it has it. It's part of a profile. Okay. Okay. I think I get it. So in the directions, mapbox walking, here I need v5/mapbox cycling, here mapbox cycling. Now if I do finish journey, actual ride, not enough input coordinates. Okay, but now if I do invalid query param alternatives. Okay, because it doesn't have like the alternatives, so let's go ahead and remove this alternatives false and end here as well. Okay, let's wait for one more point. Okay, we have 2 points. If I do that, invalid query continues straight. Okay. Let's find that part. Here, continue straight through. And the AND operator, remove it. Let's try again. Come on, one more. Why did you stop? Vamos. Is he at a crossroad? Stop sign? Come on. Okay, if now I press finish, we have code okay, matching, confidence, distance, and so on. And we have geometry. Okay, perfect. That's exactly what we want. And I think it's going to be quite similar to consume it as we use the get directions. So let's check where we have the get directions. In the scooter provider. And we get the new direction. We set it in state. And then we consume it where? Direction.routes.geometry coordinates. Here we have the result dot geometry without routes dot geometry dot coordinates. So can we simply replace in state the coordinates with the ones that we fetched? So basically from GPS coordinates to the actual route. That's right, provider. Where is the finish? Start, finish, ride. Can we do set ride route with the actual route dot, how did I say, dot geometry dot coordinates? I don't know, let's see. So if we have it like this, then we press finish. Oh, it doesn't want. Something happened there. And then we press finish. Cannot read proper coordinates of undefined. It should be. Oh, it should be matchings. Dot matchings. Dot at position 0. Yes, it works. I see that it works. If I go ahead and start the journey again and reload the application so that we start tracking from the beginning, we're gonna wait for a second to get like some weird coordinates. Then we're gonna create when we finish the journey, we're gonna create the actual route. And wait a second. Now if I press finish journey, look at this line that is very like funky. It will become like the actual route that most probably the user took. So that's perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. And besides the geometry, probably you are also going to have some other information. Can you please stop? I can go ahead and open this and request it in the browser so that we can see the data. So we have what? We have matchings, the geometry, the duration and distance. So const ride route chords is going to be this one. Const ride route duration is going to be dot duration, and the ride route distance is going to be distance, because we see that we have here dot duration and dot distance. And what we can do is in the Supabase, let's go ahead and update the table rights so that we can store also information about route duration. A route duration, that is going to be what type? Float, probably. Duration, yeah. Float. And route distance, or maybe, yeah, let's do route distance, float 8, and let's do route chords, the coordinates of a route, and they will be stored as what? I don't know. Should we just do a JSON, textual JSON data, or JSON-B binary, or just as a text? I don't know, let's try with JSON, the coordinates to store them over route, and let's do save. So when we update the route and finish it, we can also store the route duration as route duration, ride route duration, route distance as distance, and the route chords as this one. Let's give it a try and see if it will work. Now we have some coordinates and so on. We can do finish journey. It will properly add it there. And it saved the data in the database. If we're gonna update and look at the data here, I will expand it. We see that the route duration is approximate, like it's based on the directions API. It's approximate this amount of, I think, seconds. The route distance is this amount of meters, so it's 1.6 kilometers, and these are the coordinates of a route. So that means that we are storing everything in the database, and later on we can go ahead, fetch and display information about that route. Again, like if you want to show the history of the route. Our user is still going, but the route is saved, the ride is closed, and everything is perfect the way we wanted it. So yes, that is keeping track of a route. We can go ahead and remove some of the console logs. And let's go ahead and do git add, git commit. Track ride route and store it in database. I'm gonna do git push origin main. Yes, perfect, perfect. And that's everything that I have prepared for you today, guys. I'm really happy that I also managed to show you one extra API besides our backend, the API for, even do it. The API for matching a route based on a list of coordinates. Okay, he's still running through the city. Okay, perfect. Alright guys, I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Let me know in the comments what other things would you like us to do in the future. We have a lot of projects, we have a lot of ideas. If you are learning React Native and building mobile applications, make sure to subscribe to the channel. After 4 hours, I'm quite tired. Very dehydrated, but I'm very happy with the result that we got here. So yeah, thank you very much guys, and I will see you next week with a new React Native.